Well, 2017's come and gone, and if you watched my last list, my best and worst of the movie, best and worst movies of 2017, you'll have seen my top 10 and bottom 10 movies of the year, along with a few honourable and dishonourable mentions. Now, you may remember that I stipulated, when I did that list, I would only include movies which I seen in 2017, so if they were 2017 movies but I seen them this year, they wouldn't be eligible. But since then, I've had a chance to catch up on some 2017 movies which, because I didn't see them last year, didn't make my list. But I still think we're deserving of a mention, and because we have the Oscars coming up this weekend, I think it'll be interesting to sort of catch up on a few movies that I only got round to watching recently. So these movies aren't going to be in any particular order. I'm not going to go into any great detail, and as you can probably hear, I've not scripted this video. Now there's only 6 of them, but like I say, I really enjoyed them, and I thought I would just throw in a few words about them before it gets to the award season, and then we get into all the major movies of 2018. So here's my list of 6 honourable mentions of 2017. First up is Breathe. I remember the first time I heard about this movie, and when I heard about its concept about a guy who had a really serious disability and how he tried not to let it affect his life professionally and personally, and how he had a strong woman to stand beside him, I thought, this is pretty much just the theory of everything over again. But it was a really, really nice movie. I totally forgot it was Andy Serkis's directorial debut. I totally forgot until the credits rolled. I'm like, wow, he did a really good job. It's just a really, really lovely movie. It doesn't over-sentimentalize. It doesn't really sort of hammer in the sympathy. It shows you how interesting the guy was. He's like Stephen Hawking. He's very interesting. He's a really, really funny guy. Claire Foy is just brilliant as his wife, who you can see she's trying to be strong and she's trying not to let things get to her, but she does get pushed to her limits quite frequently, just like Felicity Jones does in Theory of Everything. It's a pretty funny movie, to be honest. It's a lot funnier than you would think, given the subject matter about a guy with crippling polio, but the fact that he was one of the main driving forces behind disabled people being taken a lot more seriously and not just being dismissed, and about how people who have these serious disabilities could go on to live very, very fulfilling lives just like he did, and how he lived his life entirely on his own terms. I just really, really, really enjoyed this movie. I look forward to seeing more from Andy Serkis in the future. Andrew Garfield's great, Claire Foy's great. It's a really well put together movie. It's very, very heartwarming, but without being cloying or over sentimental. It just does a really, really good job. So definitely check Breathe out if you get the chance. The Big Sick. I mentioned in my best movies of the year list, I got to a movie called A Man Called Ove, and I said that while it wasn't the best movie I've seen that year, it was definitely the funniest. Well, I think Big Sick would be a close second. I've never been the biggest fan of rom-coms. There's a whole load that I like, movies like Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, When Harry Met Sally, films like that. But for me, I find a lot of them just tend to be very samey. They tend to be very, very slushy, not that funny at all, very predictable, very rote. The Big Sick was just excellent. It was one of the best sitcoms, rom-coms, that I've probably ever seen. I'm not the biggest fan of Kumail Nanjiani, I think that's how you say his name. I've not seen any of his other material anyway, but he was just excellent in this movie. I didn't know it was based on his real life relationship, like meeting his wife, until the movie was finished. But I'm glad I got to see it. It's a very funny but also very, very poignant story. It's all about love and about career and about commitment, and I think more than anything else, family. I love how Camille's interaction with his girlfriend's family allows him to understand the connection he shares with his own family and the kind of cultural differences in a kind of East is East way, with very different cultural backgrounds coming together. I was not prepared for how good this movie was. I'd heard lots of good things about it. I just never got around to seeing it, but eventually I did, only a month or two ago. It was just brilliant. Honestly, you have to see this movie. Even if you don't like rom-coms, you have to see it. This movie contains, and I hope this doesn't sound horrible, but this just has to be said, it contains, I think, probably the funniest 9/11 joke I've ever heard. I was absolutely howling with laughter. it sounds horrible, but it's well set up. It makes a really good point. It subverts expectations, and you will just not see it coming at all. And a lot of the humour is like that. A lot of the humour it's just very snappy. It's very on the ball. A lot of the punchlines are just great and come out of nowhere. And all round, it's just a brilliant movie. There's really not that much wrong with it. It might be a bit emotionally heavy for some people, but I loved it. And if I'd seen this last year, it would have been in my top 10, guaranteed. Next up is Loving Vincent. I've never been a massive fan of Vincent van Gogh's work, or even really painting in general. I went to the museum in Amsterdam 2 years ago. That was really, really cool. And to see this movie was, I think it's fair to say, it was an experience. Getting to see, having been and seen his paintings in real life, and then getting to see them brought to life by the animators was just incredible. This movie is worth seeing for the aesthetics alone, how they recreated Van Gogh's style so faithfully, and just, it looks like no other movie you've ever seen. The way that, like, the sort of elaborate, the sort of continuing arching strokes of Van Gogh's painting, how they move in the scenes and like transition, like it'll go from one scene to the next, and the brushstrokes that are in the sky to make like the clouds and the sky and the sun suddenly transform, and they move down, they move around, and suddenly it turns into the houses of the villages. It's fantastic. It really is incredible to watch. The story-wise, it's pretty good. Like, the end of Van Gogh's life, his death, it's still interesting. It's still interesting to speculate over what happened. The movie does shed a fair bit of light on it, and it does give you some conflicting theories, but really, I put this movie on the list, I'll admit, purely because of the way it looks, because it just looks incredible. I think it's the kind of movie you could watch and still enjoy with the sound turned off. It just looks that interesting. It's a labour of love in the best possible sense. You can tell it took a long time to make. It only had a budget of a few million as well. I thought it would cost a lot more, but there was over, I think, 800 painters who had to paint every single frame in Van Gogh's style. So it would have taken a long time. I'm glad they did it. It's not remarkable. I'm pretty sure it's not going to win the Best Animated Feature Oscar. It'd be nice if it did, because it would really reward the time and the effort and the patience that must have went into putting it together. But I'm still really glad I've seen it just to look at it. It is an animated marvel. Battle of the Sexes. Steve Carell has made a very successful transition between sort of silly knockabout comedies like 40-Year-Old Virgin and Anchorman into a lot more serious work with things like Foxcatcher, The Big Short, and now Battle of the Sexes. It's great to see that he's made that leap, because he is a really, really good actor when given really strong material. Emma Stone has been consistently excellent for years now, I think. I loved her in Birdman and especially La La Land, and it's great to have them together. And it's a movie which it sort of tries to strike a balance between being serious and wanting to say something, but also trying to be entertaining and trying to make you enjoy the story. It highlights the glaring disparity between male and female athletes, not just how much they're paid, but also how much attention they get. It's actually shocking, some of the dialogue, just to think how badly one gender was treated in sport back then, just because of their gender. That was it. They had to prove themselves, because everyone's just like, oh, men are naturally better. So they had a real uphill struggle, and this movie really, really brings that through. The tennis matches are really, really well done. I'm not a big tennis fan, but the tennis matches, it does get very, very tense watching it, not only because you know they're fighting for victory, but for overall a much, much higher purpose. I think the two leads play off each other. It's really an acting showcase for Carell and Stone. And while it's not, for Stone, it's not as serious a work as like Birdman or La La Land, but it's still a really, really great movie, and she's really dedicated to the part. It's a really entertaining film, I think. It's more, I think, for the statement it makes rather than for being an absolute quality movie. It is a quality movie, but I think it tries harder to say, this is wrong, this was wrong, this needs to be rectified. And I think it does say that very well. So, yeah, thoroughly enjoyable movie, I think. Star Wars: The Last Jedi. In terms of the Star Wars movies that came before it, I didn't like the prequel trilogy. I liked the original trilogy, and I really, really liked The Force Awakens. I think it did a great job not only recreating, the sort of Star Wars heyday, but also continuing the mythos, bringing in new characters which were just as likable, just as engaging as the ones from the original trilogy, and just carrying on the story. The Last Jedi, I think, was an excellent follow-up. There was a lot of, not controversy, but I was surprised when I went on Rotten Tomatoes. It was about 50% approval audience-wise. I think with a Star Wars audience, you do get very, very visceral reactions, and if there's a few things they don't like, then for a movie that's got that much of a franchise that has that strong a fan base behind it, it's really difficult to please everybody. Personally, like I say, I thought the movie was excellent. I still love the new characters, Rey, Finn, the little BB-8, all the new characters they've brought on board. I love how this movie parallels Empire Strikes Back in a similar way that Force Awakens paralleled A New Hope, how in the whole master-student training dynamic, Luke is now Yoda and Rey is now Luke. I love that. I think the whole Luke and Rey thing was probably my favourite part of the movie. Luke now begrudgingly passing on his skills to the next generation. I thought that was fantastic. I loved Rey's development. I love Rey's interaction with Kylo Ren and how they're now two sides of the same coin, and how they're both coming closer but are both still very far apart in terms of where they are in regards to the Force. There was things about it I didn't like that much. Spoilers if you've not seen it. The bit where Finn tries to sacrifice himself at the end and that gets ruined. I hated that. I thought if he had gone through it, that would have been much more effective. I was actually feeling really tense sat in my cinema chair watching it. That would have been a lot better. The whole bit when they go down to try and find Benicio del Toro, that seems like an unnecessary digression. But overall, the space battles were great. I loved the character development. The thing I liked most about it overall was just how hopeless the movie paints the rebels' situation. Every single time when they think they're getting ahead anywhere, something strikes them down, and they're constantly being hounded by the First Order. I just thought that was great. Like I said, not to everybody's tastes, but it was really enjoyable. I thought it felt like a proper Star Wars film. It felt like a proper continuation of this new trilogy. Like I say, I think some people overreacted to it negative wise, but overall I was really impressed, and now I can't wait for episode 9. And finally, The Disaster Artist. If I was going to give you the top 3 movies that I was looking forward to seeing most in 2017, it would be, in no particular order, Dunkirk, Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and The Disaster Artist. I'm a big fan of The Room and all the speculation and just mystery that surrounds Tommy Wiseau, and how he managed to get together a cast and crew and the budget to produce one of the worst movies ever made. And as movies like Ed Wood have shown, I think movies about bad art are often a lot more entertaining than movies about good art. And The Room is about the best bad art you can possibly get, I think. I could not wait to see this movie. I hadn't read the book that Greg Sestero wrote this movie's based on, but I've seen The Room. I've seen critiques of The Room. I've seen satirical videos on The Room. I've seen interviews with Tommy Wiseau. This movie is still just as mysterious as it ever was, but I loved this movie. I absolutely adored this film, in fact. It's funny, it's clever, it's beautifully acted. James Franco is so good as Tommy Wiseau. Everybody tries to imitate him. That strange way he talks, and the long hair, and how he always looks just sort of semi-asleep. He's a very, very strange dude, and the movie itself is also very strange. But what I loved most about this movie was how common criticisms about The Room, like how plot threads don't go anywhere, how the dialogue is completely bizarre, how there's so many non sequiturs. I like how so much of that is integrated into the dialogue when, like, there's a scene where they're sitting discussing the script, and the woman who plays Lisa's mother is talking about how, you know, this line says, "I have breast cancer. Does this ever come up again?" It doesn't. But Tommy doesn't really give a good reason why it doesn't come up again. It just, hey, that's the script. So it just doesn't come up again. I love the Franco brothers in it. They're brilliant together. And it's just a really fantastic story of following your dream. I know it's a bit of a cliche in Hollywood to make stories about making movies and about following your dreams. But this was just such a weird dream. And the movie that came out of it is just as weird, but it's constantly entertaining. Honestly, there's not a dull moment in it. There's not a bad link in the whole movie. It's fascinating. It's not entirely factually accurate. Like, the story about the premiere of The Room is not correct, but it's still great, and it's just so nice that this weird ass movie that has brought so much joy to so many people, its origin story has finally been told. Tommy Wiseau is an interesting individual. He's a weirdo, but the movie doesn't really completely dissect him, but it would be impossible to. But I like the fact that James Franco had Tommy Wiseau's blessing to do this movie, and I love the movie that came out of it. I think his direction was wonderful. I think the cast were all spot on. It's incredible that they got so many big name actors to play such little parts, and it just looks like it was so much fun. And for that reason, if Disaster Artist, if I had seen it last year, it would, I think, be at probably number 2 in my top 10 movies of the year. It was just incredible. If you're in any way interested in The Room, or about the art of filmmaking, or about Tommy Wiseau himself, definitely check this movie out. I can't wait. I'll get it on DVD as soon as it comes out. I can't wait for it. I love this movie immensely. It's probably one of my top 20 favourite movies of all time. So that's my 6 honourable mentions of 2017 list. Like I say, the Oscars are only a couple of days away, so even if I do see more 2017 movies after the Oscars, I'm probably not going to do another one of these lists. I'm looking forward to 2018. I think there could be a lot of good flicks coming out. I'm probably not going to get to see as many as I did last year, so it's unlikely I'll do a top 10, bottom 10 list. I might do if I get to see enough movies, but if not, I might just do something like this, like a quick rundown of films that I've seen. But thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it, and I hope you've seen my best and worst of 2017 movie. If not, it's on my channel, so you can go and watch it. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you soon.